The typical social worker is, oh, you're snatching somebody's kids, or oh, you're going to check in people's houses, or oh, you're helping people with housing and food stamps now. I'm doing none of that, so don't come to me for that.
Thank you for tuning in to Sip on This with a Paris. About to get lit with these topics. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for the love and your time. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Without further ado, I bring to you this for you to sip on too.
What's up, everybody? You're tuning in to a new episode of Sip on This. As you see, I have a new special guest. Do you want to introduce yourself, or
Sure.
do you want me to?
Hi, everyone. I'm Shaniqua.
Oh my gosh, my annoying, I guess, cousin at this point, because I've known her for too long as well. But on today's episode, I brought Shaniqua on because in last week's episode, I realized, looking back, that it was a underlying theme of kind of like mental health during the pandemic. So I figured, with that being your career, being a mental health therapist, you will be the essential person to add to the conversation. So specifically, I wanted to discuss mental health and how important it is, specifically in the Black community. Not to negate anybody else out, because mental health is important for everybody, but I believe in our culture is something that's oftentimes overlooked. So I just wanted to get your perspective about that particular topic.
Absolutely. So first off, I actually just want to say, if you do not have a therapist, please think about actually going to see one, especially nowadays with the pandemic, the racial things that have been going on.
Right.
Me as a therapist, I actually had to seek a therapist myself because of everything that's been happening in today's society. So it's just so important nowadays. So first off, I wanted to discuss trauma in the Black community. A lot of Black people may or may not realize that they're going through some level of trauma. So, for example, police. When you see a police officer, or when you see blue lights around you, you may get that little anxious feeling, that little tension in your body. That's probably from trauma. And it doesn't have to be trauma that you've actually experienced. It could be trauma that you witnessed on TV. We've all seen George Floyd. We've all seen Breonna Taylor. Like, we've all seen all these different cases, and that can produce secondary trauma. So I do think it's very, very important to see a therapist or do some type of mental health healing. I believe in different types of mental health healing. It doesn't always have to be sitting with a therapist, even though I do think everyone can benefit from that. Not to be biased.
So you actually touched on a few things that I kind of wanted to add to. For one, I didn't even realize that like you can actually develop trauma, but like indirectly. But at the same time, that kind of makes sense, because like that's almost like a kid witnessing their mom being abused, although they've never been physically abused themselves. It messes with their mental. So I don't know why I never really put two and two together, especially when it came to like experiencing like all the stuff you see on social media that could be triggering if it were to ever happen to you.
Absolutely. I know, me personally, and I don't know if this will be beneficial for everyone, but me personally, I have to take breaks from social media. That's so important to me. Things that you see on the Shade Room, Hollywood Unlocked, just all these different things about different killings, Capitol Hill riot, like all these different things that you're seeing on TV are either producing some type of trauma, some type of anger, some type of frustration, and it builds and it builds, it builds. And if you don't process those things, if you don't talk about those things, or you're not dealing with it in a healthy manner, you're going to hit boiling point. It's inevitable. I talk to my clients all the time about it. It's what I call a soda bottle effect. So, you know how you shake the soda bottle, and eventually that last little thing happens, boom, you explode. So it's so important that you're processing all those feelings and those emotions in a healthy way, however that may be.
Yeah, going back to what you said about kind of taking a break from social media, that kind of plays into the fact why I choose just not to watch the news. I know I probably should watch the news, but the news hypes up so much, especially in the heat of the moment. So it's just like, I'd rather just like not even, honestly, my news is social media, like the shade room and all that stuff. And like, once I read up on certain topics, like for a certain length of time, like, yeah, I kind of like, like detach from it, so to speak. And then, gosh, it was something else that you brought up too that I kind of wanted to speak to, and I lost my train of thought that fast. But something else that I actually don't think I ever asked you as long as I've known you. What made you even get into the mental health like field?
Great question. I love answering this question.
Oh my gosh.
This is kind of weird to say because I don't know very many people that have thought about this. You know how when you're younger, like as a kid, you're like, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a lawyer. I've always known that I wanted to do some level of counseling. I didn't know what exactly that looked like or how I would get there, but I've always known that I wanted to do counseling. And when I was younger, I always thought counseling was like giving advice. So I was always giving advice to my friends. They would always come to me. As I got older, I learned that it's different than giving advice. It's not the same thing as giving advice. But going into high school, still wanted to do counseling. Went to college, got into family studies, still wanted to do counseling. It wasn't until I talked to one of the professors that I was working with, and he sat me down and he talked to me about my counseling goal and what that would look like. I was going to either be a marriage and family counselor or actually major in counseling. But once I got to college, it broadened my scope a little bit. So I knew I wanted to do counseling, but I didn't want to be stuck in a box. Like I didn't want to pay all this money for this degree and then have to go back to school if I wanted to do something different. So he said, why don't you do social work? And it didn't dawn on me because, the typical social worker is, oh, you're snatching somebody's kids, or oh, you're going to check in people's houses, or oh, you're helping people with housing and food stamps now. I'm doing none of that, so don't come to me for that. What he told me that I could do is I could do social work, but I could do clinical social work. So I could focus on mental health. I could do counseling, but if I wanted to step outside of that box, I could still do some case management stuff if I wanted to. I can still work in so many different levels. Like I can go work with law enforcement. I could help out with hospitals. Like I can go in so many different professions with it. So I ended up doing clinical social work, and that's what I do now, and I actually really love it.
How long have you been doing that for now?
I graduated in 2016, and I got my provisional license in 2016, so I've been doing that since 2016. Yeah. So
something else I'm going to ask, though, what does your program really consist of to prepare you for being out in the field is really like what I'm getting at.
Good question. So I actually went to a joint Master of Social Work program. So Greensboro, A&T, NCA&T, Aggie Pride, and UNCG, Spartans. So I went there. It was a clinical-based program, so I did learn different ways to do therapy. So I did individual therapy. I've done some family therapy. I've done group therapy. I learned so many different ways and approaches to do therapy. So it was mainly focused in therapy. However, as I grew in my profession and in school, I learned different case management ways, different resources I can provide people, different ways to direct people to different levels. I've worked in hospital settings. I've worked in assisted living facilities, nursing homes, out in the community. I've done a lot in my few years that I've been in the field.
So I have a quick question. It's fine. You don't have to get into like details or whatever. But again, due to the fact that at the beginning of this episode, I was speaking to the fact that like mental health isn't important, but Black people tend to shy away from wanting to like talk about it. So in your years of experience, do you tend to have a lot of Black clients or?
That's a good question. The sad but truth is that most of the clients that I have seen that are Black were either in a psychiatric hospital outside of their will, or because they're homeless and their circumstances ended up putting them in the hospital where they reached rock bottom and they have no other choice.
Oh.
There's very few Black people that I see that are there voluntarily because they're ready to start and change their life, which is kind of upsetting. Wish I would see them sooner. And then my people that I see like on an individual basis, I want to say majority are white. I do see a few Black clients, not many. I want to see more, but again, we just have to work on, as a culture, as a society, we really need to work on breaking that stigma. I tell people this all the time. I don't understand why mental health is not treated the same way as medical is treated. Your mind is part of you. So I don't understand why it's not. Honestly, I feel like a lot of things could be prevented if people were proactive about mental health.
Absolutely.
Like, go check in with a therapist once a year, the same way you go check in with your doctor and make sure everything's working okay. Same way you go get your teeth cleaned every 6 months. Like, go check in with somebody and just vent. Let somebody know how you've been doing. Talk about those different stressors you've been going through. Even if things are going perfect, talk about that stuff. Just so you can prevent having to go through a crisis and getting to that rock bottom point.
You know what? You just touched on something that I never really realized about myself just now, because it's like, for me, I'm pro like therapy, although I've never gone, which is like ironic in a way, but I never felt the need to actually go until I felt like I had a big enough problem to where I needed to seek help. But you just made me realize that now is probably the best time to go, so you'll be able to prepare yourself for when like those issues do arise or whatever. But something else I wanted to touch on, I feel like the reason why I asked you the question about whether a lot of Black people are actually like clients of yours or not is because I feel like just in our culture, right? I feel like what we're kind of like tiptoeing around is the fact that like something that I feel like all Black people can attest to is the fact that growing up, you were always taught not to talk about the issues that occur under your roof, like just outside the house. Like whatever happens in the house needs to stay inside the home. So having that type of mindset, I feel like you're kind of conditioned to be against going and seeking mental therapy. You get what I'm saying? So I feel like something that, granted, I'm not gonna lie, our generation is a mess regarding certain things. But I feel like we are kind of breaking a lot of molds. Whereas now we're like, you know what? No, like I want to seek the help. You know what I mean? I want to get that other person to come in and kind of like. Granted, you just said it's not necessarily advice that therapists are giving. It's more so like, you said the word and it really stood out, but again, I lost my train of thought. Yes, guidance. That's what I was looking for. Guidance. Because I keep wanting to say advice, but it's guidance.
It's not advice. So please do not think that when you go to therapy that they're there to give you advice and suggestions. That is not what therapy is. And it's not, we're there to uplift you. We're there to help you figure out and how to solve your problems. We're there to work with you. If you have someone that's just handing you answers, what are you learning from that? That's just the easy route out. That's not what us therapists are there for. I tell people, you have to think of it as you are the vehicle and your therapist is Siri and your GPS. We are there to guide. We're working together, essentially. But something you did say that really I did want to hit on too is I understand that, like, as a Black person, we grow up in these households that they're teaching us just pray about it, it'll go away. That's very, in my opinion, toxic, because what happens if you pray about it and it's not going away? Or you just can't wake up and snap and be a different person? It becomes very problematic. So I think it's best that we be more open-minded. And I like what people like Taraji are doing, Charlamagne the God are doing, just people that are being very big advocates for mental health and just showing that there's nothing wrong with going to see a therapist, guys. It does not mean that you're crazy. It just means that you're trying to better yourself. There's nothing wrong with doing that.
Something else that you kind of touched on too, I know a lot of people do feel like just seeking out a therapist makes them feel like they're admitting that they're quote unquote crazy, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're crazy. You get what I'm saying? I feel like that makes you very sane, that you can actually like admit like, okay, I got an issue that I need to sort out. So you're seeking the help. So, you know, if you don't want to help yourself, like nobody else can give you that assistance. Absolutely. It always starts from within. I feel like that's just my personal opinion. But something else that I think we kind of touched on earlier is I feel like now during this pandemic, it's just over the course of this year, we've dealt with so much in so little time that I feel like I can only imagine what people with like mental health issues could potentially be going through. Because again, I myself, although I'm pretty positive and can kind of like work through my issues, and I have certain outlets that I can confide and invent to work through certain issues, but just like I could have those outlets, unfortunately, a lot of people aren't as fortunate as me. So they could be like suffering in silence, you know, during this entire time. And there's also people that are suffering just like from abuse that could be physical, and due to the fact that we're all pretty much like not quarantined, but still like in close quarters or whatever with one another, right? So if you're living with an abuser, and then they're abusing you physically, that's now affecting your mental, and you're stuck. It's like you're trapped. And it's like, what do you do? Especially at a time like this, like how do you seek help? So
absolutely. One thing I really want people to work on, because you just brought up a lot of things that I just thought about. One thing I really do want people to work on, especially Black families, Black parents, just Black support system, because sometimes Black people are not raised by mom and dad. So whoever your Black support system is, really, really work on coming from a non-judgmental place. And also and also be supportive and understanding. One thing that this field has taught me is to really be non-judgmental, because I've met so many people in a hospital setting that were lawyers, doctors, professors, just people big in real estate, like people that really have a lot, that really hit rock bottom after things just kept piling up, and they just kept pushing it to the wayside. So please just don't be judgmental, because you never know. God giveth, but God can take us away. So please don't be judgmental when you meet someone that is going through a mental health crisis, that may be going through depression or anxiety. Be supportive. Ask them what they need and listen to what they need. Don't help them the way that you want to be helped. Help them the way that they're asking you in that moment. If it's, I mean, of course, within healthy reasons, but yeah, be supportive, be understanding.
So I have a scenario, right? This is hypothetical. So say you have someone close to you that you feel like is going through a lot. They seem really stressed. They're clearly struggling. And like, how do you suggest that person going to get help? Because I've been in a situation situations where I feel like people are struggling and they don't want to openly admit, like out loud. Basically they're in denial that they're living in struggle. And it's like, you want to provide assistance, but they're not taking any of your advice. They feel like they can figure it all out on their own. But it's like, how do you help that person to realize, A, they need assistance of some sort to, you know, be able to mentally get back on track or whatever, without feeling like you're like, again, to the point that you're making, judging them or attacking them. And, you know, just like, I don't want to say turning your nose up, but I know a lot of people that are on the receiving end of that are just like, why are you on my case? Like, you know, they feel attacked in a way. So I just, for my own sake of knowing, I wanted to know, how would you think that person can be like addressed or whatever without them feeling attacked or judged?
Good question. One, I'm really a firm believer in, sometimes you can't help people if they don't want to be helped. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. Change has to come from within that person. I have a lot of conversations with family members that are dealing with someone that's dealing with substance use, and they want them to change so badly. They wanted them to just stop using and just stop picking up. Granted, I know that it's not that easy, but the hardest conversation I have to have with people is that you cannot force someone into a change.
Right.
Even though you see them spiraling, you can have that conversation with them, but you can't force them into a change that they're not ready for.
Yeah.
It has to come from within that person.
Yeah.
But I personally, if I see a family member struggling, or if I see a friend struggling, the first conversation I probably have with them is a conversation that'll come from like a caring place. You have to be very tactful with how you talk to someone.
Yeah.
So being very respectful, like, hey, I noticed that X, Y, and Z is happening. Can I help you with anything? Or do you want to talk about it? I'm here if you want to talk about it. What's going on with you? Make it more about them than it is about you.
Right.
Okay. So don't say like things like, I had a good example, but don't say things that'll be like, you're hurting my feelings. You're doing this, and X, Y, Z is hurting me.
You're making everything about I.
Yes. Don't make it about you, because that's going to come across as selfish.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Make it about them. Like, I really care about you, and I just want to make sure that you're good. So if you want to talk about anything, you need me to do something for you to kind of help ease up any stress that you're going through, let me know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But first you want to just ask them how you can be helpful. And if they're telling you, I don't need you right now, I don't want anything from you, you have to respect that. Respect what a person is saying.
Yeah.
Granted, we see the spiral. We don't want them to go down that road, but you cannot force things on people.
Yeah.
Even if you did everything in your power to prevent that from happening, it can still happen.
Yeah. So, I was about to say, not to cut you off, but but the one thing that I want, it's actually two things I wanted to add to that. One, I feel like there are certain people, I feel like honestly this is most people, like it's a natural instinct that when someone comes to you trying to get you to conform a certain way, you naturally want to do the opposite of whatever it is that they're trying to get you to do. So then on top of that, I feel like you kind of like, this may sound raggedy for what I'm about to say, because I can't think of a way to dress this up, so I'm gonna just rip the band-aid off. So I really feel like you're gonna kind of like finesse the situation away, right, and address it differently. And it's all about, I feel like it's more so like not necessarily what you say, but how you say it.
Absolutely.
So if you can't, like, to the point that you also just made, be like, yo, I feel like this. I feel like you're hurting my feelings by you feeling like this, and like I don't understand why you can't snap out of it. Like, those are all the reasons that will get the person to continue down that path in which they were traveling down. You're trying to get them to reroute. You get what I'm saying? And
not even just that, they'll probably block you.
Yeah, I could
they're
definitely
not
see
coming
that too.
to you anymore about anything else.
Yeah.
You just kind of push them to the wayside. You turn them off. Like, so
you're no longer an outlet.
You're no longer an outlet.
If you ever were, just know going forward, you're not for them. Something else I wanted to ask you is actually something that you touched on earlier about how you yourself have a therapist. So again, this may be raggedy. So I'm just wanting to know, and this just doesn't go for like therapists. This also goes for professions such as like other lawyers and doctors. I always want to know, once you achieve like a certain level in your career, how is it going to someone else within that same career field, like asking like for assistance to like work through your own personal issues? It's like, because at the end of the day, of course you can't self-diagnose. I mean, technically I guess you can, but it's a biased opinion, which is clearly the reason why you're seeking help. But I can very well foresee someone maybe telling you what they think you're going through and how they feel like the guidance they provide, and like tell you how to get to a certain point, and you could very well just be like, no, that's dumb. Like, professional to professional, that sounds dumb. Like, no. So I just wanted to know from your point of view, like what's your stance on that?
Oh, that's a good question. So probably some other therapists could probably attest to this. I feel like therapists are the ones that need therapy the most, and therapists are the ones that are probably the worst clients. Because we're just gonna rip the band-aid off, for lack of a better terms. You're not gonna bullshit me, because I know when someone's bullshitting me in a therapy session. But at the same time, I think therapists can benefit from it the most because we take on so much of our, whether we do it intentionally or not, we take on a lot of our clients' trauma. Like, I don't work an 8-hour day, but it feels like I work a 12-hour day after just seeing maybe like 5 to 6 clients. Like, it's just a lot to take on and try to help people through solving whatever issues that they're going through.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, a person that comes across as they know everything is probably very problematic. And I know that I don't know everything.
Yeah.
I know. And I think that's really what helps me grow, not just in my profession, but personally.
Yeah.
And if I come across always as a student willing to learn, there's so much more you can learn than a person that comes across as, I know everything.
Yeah.
I'm a therapist. I don't need a therapist.
Yeah.
I'm a doctor. I don't need another doctor because I know how to diagnose and treat myself.
Yeah.
You don't know everything.
Yeah.
That's why people exist in so many different fields, so many different professions. Even if you're in the same profession, you don't know the same thing that maybe your coworker does or your colleague does. You can learn a lot from each other. You can benefit. Yeah. So if you're so close-minded to the point where you come across as, I know everything, you're not going to learn. You're not going to grow.
Yeah.
And that's what I keep in mind, that I don't know everything. So she helps me grow professionally and she helps me grow personally.
Yeah.
And that's what I need. Somebody I can kind of bounce ideas off of and help guide me to where I'm trying to get.
So, of course, you don't have to come out and say exactly what your sessions are about, but I'm assuming, so when you have your sessions, I'm assuming you talk about personal issues you're dealing with, but do you also ask, like, professional to professional or whatever, like advice about how to deal with clients?
So that's a slippery slope, only because when I'm coming to her, it's more so about me as personal things. Like, that's a slippery slope in our cases because we're supposed to utilize our colleagues and our supervisors to do things about our own personal clients. So I don't personally ask her specifically for advice on what I should do with a specific client, but do I talk to her about tough cases that I go through and how I felt about it? Absolutely. I may not ask her a professional to professional, like, how do I handle this case? Because I have other outlets I could utilize for that. And I only have an hour with her, so. And I can't make it all about work, even though work is probably 80% of my stress level. I can't make all that time about work. I gotta talk about some of the personal things that I've gone through, because honestly, personal, whether people like to admit it or not, personal absolutely most of the time spills over into professional, whether we like to admit it or not. So you need to figure out what's going on with you personally so you can be a better professional, whatever career field that you're going through. And that's what I'm trying to do. So I don't meet a client that triggers me because of something that has happened in my past. And I can't understand why me and that person can't click very well because it's something that's triggering me that I can't even understand. So my therapist really does help with me identifying what's going on with me and how I got to the point that I'm at.
Dang, it was something. Oh yeah. So when you touched on, like, basically what I got from what you said is, it's a old school saying that, like, my dad specifically always said growing up. He was like, now I'm gonna dress it up because he was throwing shade when he said it. So the saying that my dad says is like, say, like, at work, you're used to dealing with certain people that you're just like, okay, like, what is it with this person? They're always edgy, like, day in and day out, you're having to deal with them as if you're walking on eggshells. And that's like the saying that my dad says, basically in a nutshell, if you follow that person home, you'll see, like, why they are the way they are. And like you said, a lot of, like, what they bring to work is because they're having issues at home at the end of the day. And whereas they basically are showing that they have embedded issues going on, and they're having a case of, I think the term is anger displacement.
It is. It's called displacement of anger. It could be displacement of anger, sadness, whatever. It's displacing whatever it is that you're going through and putting it on somebody that didn't even deserve it.
So, like, I just remember, like, when I first got in my career field, like, so granted, I've been working, like, since I was like 14, but I've only had 3 jobs because I was at each one for a decent amount of time. And it was like, the current job I have is like a Fortune 500 company, like it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember when I first joined the team back in 2013, we had like technically about like 60 people on our shift.
Mm-hmm.
So I just remember it was certain individuals that I'm just like, what is up with this person? Like, why are they always on 10? But also what I realized is people use work as an outlet.
Absolutely.
So like a lot of those people, you don't even have to ask them what's their issue. They're just they have cases of like vomit up the mouth where they're telling way too much of their business at work. And I'm just like, this is awkward. I didn't need to know that you was going through this at the crib. Like, why are you talking to us about this? And then it dawned on me like, oh, clearly they can't talk about it at home, or it's gotten to a point where clearly like the communication is just trash on both ends. So it's just like, well, I'm at work because back then I used to do 12-hour shifts. So I'm just like, oh, well, I guess like you're away from home for 12 hours and as crazy as this sounds, this is like your stress reliever for the day or whatever, to get away from the issues at home, which again, I think is sad. It's unfortunate, but that's a lot of people's reality.
Yeah. Have you guys ever just met someone that just overworks just to avoid going home? And people do that. I think, and people think I'm weird all the time because my friends will bring in cases that are like crazy, like child abusers and rapists and murderers. And I'm like, well, guys, you don't know the whole story. Like, you don't know what that person went through. And that's because I've met some people that have had horrific trauma backgrounds, like horrific things that you would not even think a human was capable of doing to another human being. So if you can only imagine some of the things that people have gone through and still get up every day, I don't know how they do it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how they do it. And if you can imagine that someone has grown up in a household that they don't know what love looks like. Love looks different than what you may have perceived love, the healthy version of love.
Yeah.
They may not know how to react to people. They may not know how to treat people. So yeah, they may fall into that cycle of abuse. That's what I mean by not necessarily saying that that's okay, but giving people the benefit of the doubt by not being judgmental, trying to understand where a person is coming from and where they've gone. I'm not accepting the behavior because it's not acceptable by any means, but trying to understand the behavior, because some people are going to get out of jail one day. Some people are not in jail. So if we want to help people and we want to improve how they're handling their loved ones or people that they meet, then we need to come from an understanding place than being judgmental and turning them away, because that's not solving anything.
Yeah. I just kind of going off of what you said. That's why I feel like certain people are built for your profession and others aren't. Because me, myself, I don't really consider myself a judgmental person, but at the same time, I have boundaries. And I just feel like for me, I can't really, I feel like I'm the type of person I can actually put myself in people's shoes. I learn through other people. Like, I don't have to learn directly, through my own experiences to learn like how to maneuver through life. Like, I'm the type of person, if you're somebody that I trust on a certain level, if you tell me this here is hot, I'm not touching it. I'm just a logical thinker in that aspect. So if, being a therapist or whatever, and like just knowing a lot of the cases that you're probably dealing with, I'm not cut out for that. I'm not cut out for that line of work. Like, which is crazy. It's very interesting to me. It definitely intrigues me, but it's just like at the end of the day, like, no, I can't. I'm not cut out for it. Like, I can't.
It takes. I want to say therapists are some of the strongest people that I know, but it takes a lot of patience, a lot of stepping back outside of yourself, and allowing things to trigger you. It takes a lot of understanding to try to get into this profession, and help people, because you're going to meet people that have done some terrible things in their lifetime, but they're there because they want to better themselves. So are we going to keep judging them for the things that they've done in their lifetime, or are we going to help them become a better person and help them change the way that they're moving going forward? Because if you're judging every person that you meet, or you're turning them away, you may end up making that person worse off than what they were.
Yeah.
So we really need to work on trying to be more helpful than hurtful towards people, and just trying to break that stigma of mental health.
Yeah. Yeah. But still, I still can't shake the fact. It's like, depending on what you do, though, I'm kind of looking like, oh, I'm good on
Trust
this.
me, I have my limits too. So I don't work with children. Anybody 18 and over.
You have made that
I'm very clear about that. And not that there's anything wrong with children. It's just, for me, I don't have children of my own yet, but for me, it's just too traumatic to listen to some of the stories that children have gone through.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how, like, CPS workers, I don't know how you guys do it on a daily basis, because that's just too much for me. I know as a therapist, that's just mentally too much for me to handle. Yeah. So I know my boundaries. You have to know your boundaries and your limitations and what you're willing to do. Because I hate, for any job, a person that does not want to be there. Yeah. We know that you don't want to be there. Please quit your job and find a new one.
Yes.
I know that sometimes that, especially in pandemic, I know that sometimes that's easier said than done. Yeah. But if you're not happy in what you're doing, it's translating in your work.
Yes.
It's translating in the people in the back. It is translating in your work. It is translating in the people that you are working with. And there's some professions where you absolutely cannot do that. Doctors, therapists, like customer service, any type of customer service work, you cannot, like, you have to want to be there. Yeah. I know I'm human. I know there's days where I don't want to go to work. I don't want to see that client. But I put my big girl panties on and I go into profession mode. Yeah. Because that person is paying for that service. That person is showing up for you. Yeah. Show up for them.
Yeah. Ooh. Ooh, that was a word. That whole last piece of that segment was a word. Like I said, for all you in the back, no, we feel the energy. You don't want to be here. We feel it. Hear you loud and clear.
Yeah.
But I wanted to, you said so much in this last 5 minutes that I was trying to keep tabs, like, I'm going to go back to that. But gosh, that last part really just, like, set me off my own. It's not about me, I'm not selfish. But I was really just sitting here thinking about my own situations at work, not just, like, current, but just, like, through my work experiences in general. It's certain people that stand out immediately, because I'm just like, you just didn't realize how problematic you were because your situation at the crib wasn't right. Now I'm gonna need you to go get checked out. It's fine. Like, please go get that together, because this here is not healthy for either one of us. Because then, like you said, like, honestly, I can attest to the fact that I'm that, like, the soda bottle analogy at the beginning. Like, I feel like I take on a lot because I don't like to sweat the petty stuff. Like, if I see you're having a bad day, I'm going to just avoid you and go on about my business. But when you start affecting my peace day in and day out, that's when I'm going to explode. And I'm going to get it off my chest then, and I'm going to go on about my day. But that probably isn't going to help your case out, being that you're already dealing with trauma from back home.
Absolutely.
So, it's like, work that out, and then,
I don't, as black people, I don't know not one black person that hasn't done the soda bottle effect. So I don't know any black person that hasn't consistently, whether it's that person touching your hair, or whether it's like people treating you differently, or whether it's looking at another black person being killed in the news. I don't know how many, I don't know not one black person that hasn't done the soda bottle effect, where they just keep sweeping it, letting it shake up, and then the last thing happens and you explode and everybody's confused, like, where did this come from?
You know what? I don't mean to cut you off, but that's the stuff that pisses me off, though, because it's just like, I've given you 25 passes in the course of 5 hours, 25 passes, and finally, like, I've had my limit. Like, I just got to lay into you one good time, but then you instantly somehow become the victim. And that's like, did you not see all that you did to get me to this point?
But to play devil's advocate, when you gave them that pass, why do you have an expectation that they know that they did something wrong?
It's not that I expect they know they did something wrong. I feel like the same way I'm reading your body language, you should be able to read mine to be like, okay, like I'm trying to avoid you, to prevent conflict. But I feel like you're waking up with violence, and now you're trying to bring that out of me too. And I'm really not trying to do that in certain settings, especially like, for instance, being work. That is stress. Is stress going to work? Especially dealing with a lot of stuff that you deal with at work. Mm-hmm. And the last thing you need is to have a certain conflict at work. Whereas I'm sure a lot of people can attest to the fact that if you can catch some of the people at work outside, like the outcome will be so different.
Yes. But playing devil's advocate again, you cannot expect, let's not assume, you cannot expect that someone knows what's going on with you, what's wrong with you, unless you speak up and say something. Like if you had said something 1, 2, 3 times, they can't really be confused as to where the explosive moment came from. Example, I actually did group one time and we talked about passive aggressive communication.
Ooh, triggered. This ain't about me.
And my client gave a great example. She talked about how her and her partner have like a arrangement that's been going on for some time. So she works during the day, but she still comes home and cooks and cleans. And he's like watching TV after he gets off, whatever. So same situation. So let's say Monday through Friday, she gets off work, cooks and cleans. It bothers her, but again, she doesn't say anything. She may like slams a cabinet, makes little subtle movements here and there. Partner doesn't notice, doesn't pay anything attention to it. She doesn't say anything else about it, but she just makes little subtle things here and there. Or like maybe rolls her eyes or snaps her neck, whatever. So by Saturday, soda bottle effect, guys. It's shaking, Monday through Friday, it's shaking. By Saturday comes, she has to do it again. And maybe the dishes, there's one extra dish in there. Or maybe he puts the last little dish in there after she just cleaned.
Yeah.
She snaps. She goes off. Her partner is confused. He's like, why are you mad? We do this routine all the time. Why are you mad? She's mad because her partner didn't notice or didn't help, didn't do anything, is not helping her with that routine. Is not stepping up. But did you speak up? Did you let your partner know?
Yeah.
We have this expectation that people can just read our body language and people can just assume by the way that we approach certain things that they know what's up.
Yeah.
That's not the case.
Yeah. In other words, common sense isn't that
It's not common. Common sense is not common, especially when you're dealing with people from different cultures.
Listen.
So you have to speak up. You have to be vocal. You have to say that this is not okay with me. I need you to step up and do a little bit more around the house.
Right.
So that when Saturday comes, you don't blow up and your partner's is confused. Because your partner is either going to be confused and maybe not say anything back, or it's going to create even more problems because your partner's going to argue back with you. Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, right. I didn't deserve that. That was extra.
I didn't deserve that. That was extra. So we have to work on not doing passive aggressive communication. It's not, you don't need to be aggressive. You don't need to be passive. You need to be assertive.
Yeah. Woo! It's the gym for me.
You need to be able to speak what's going on with you and what your wants and what your needs are, but being respectful at the same time. Be tactful. Read the room. You read who you're talking to. Like we were talking about earlier about what advice you would give to a person that's stressed out.
Yeah.
For your friends and your family, you know how to talk to them. You've been talking to them for X amount of years. We've known each other for 10 years plus. I know how to talk to him. So I'm going to approach him differently than I would my other friends. Or I'm going to approach him differently than I would my family. Read the room. Be tactful and respectful in your conversation. People at the end of the day just want to be respected.
Yeah, that's.
And if you're being respectful and tactful in your conversation with a person, that's going to go a long way, more of a long way than you trying to be passive aggressive or aggressive in your communication at all.
That goes back to it's not what you say, but how you say it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
Sometimes it is what you say.
You're right. You're right.
Sometimes it can't be.
It depends on the circumstances.
But I think people are a little bit fearful of hurting people's feelings, so that's why they don't say something at that point in time.
Yeah.
But like I tell my clients, you can tell somebody stuff that's hurtful to you and things that you don't like and be respectful about it.
Yeah.
You can say, hey, when you do, what is it? They call the I messages.
Yeah.
When I see you do X, Y, and Z, it really hurts me.
Yeah.
It really makes me feel this way. I mean, granted, it sounds cliche, but I messages do work.
Yeah.
It worked because you're not pointing the finger at the other person.
Yeah.
You're not saying you did this, you did that, you did this. You're speaking from your truth. Like, I feel this way when you do this or when this happens.
Yeah.
So just be respectful, guys. Like, I don't know why that's hard for a lot of people. Just be respectful in your communication when it comes to people.
I feel like something else that I feel like our generation is guilty of is I think our like elders, they always are quick to point out how disrespectful a lot of people are in our generation because they feel as though you can just like speak to them any kind of way. But on the flip side, I feel like our elders were taught again to sweep a lot of stuff under the rug and take a lot of that blatant disrespect or whatever, because if they were to say anything back, it would be labeled as back talk, being disrespectful.
Absolutely.
But there has to be like a happy like
medium.
Yeah. But it's a sticky medium to try to accomplish at the same time, because again, you don't want to be offensive, but you still want to be assertive. So it's
I think it's very problematic for parents to not let your children be opinionated. And the reason I say that is because you're not teaching them how to speak up when someone is doing them wrong. And you're not going to be there with them 24/7. You need them to be able to speak up when someone is doing them wrong. And it's important, like, as you're raising your child, teach them how to be opinionated, but teach them how to be respectful to their elder. Teach them how to feel comfortable with coming to you. If you always dismiss things that they're trying to tell you, they're not going to feel comfortable telling you certain things. And to this day, me and my mom have a great relationship, but there's some things that I don't necessarily feel comfortable with talking to her about, because I feel like if I was younger, that would kind of shut down. Like, we don't talk about those things.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that's the case. That's like a common dynamic between parents and their kids. Like, actually, me and my dad actually just talked about this not too long ago due to a situation like with one of my sisters or whatever. And he was like, like for me, I will admit to the fact that in my family, I'm the quote unquote insensitive one, but it's also because like I'm very like passive in the sense of I don't really get bothered that easily. So like to everyone else, I come off like unempathetic and like, again, insensitive or whatever. So like with this given situation, I was kind of just like, I feel like we're dwelling on this issue too long. Like, what is the problem? And my dad broke it down to me and was like, at the end of the day, like, you're able to think from that mindset because like you're an adult, whereas your sister is a teenager. So like, I can't talk to her again the same way that I talk to you. Like, I got to dissect it a bit further for her to be able to digest, because I can't just dismiss how she feels. And of course that wasn't what I was saying. I in no way, shape, or form was telling them to dismiss how she was feeling or whatever. But just given the circumstances or whatever, I was just like, I just would have shut that down a little quicker than that. But when he broke it down, I was like, it makes sense.
I think that's probably why we click so well, because I'm probably which is ironic because I'm the therapist, but I'm probably the insensitive, unaffectionate one too in my family. But I think it has a lot to do with the way that you're raised. I had this conversation with one of my other friends too, and we were talking about how we didn't grow up in like really affectionate households where like I love yous were very common, or hugs and kisses. So it's kind of awkward for me to do it now because that's not how I grew up, which is weird because my sisters are a little bit more affectionate, but for me,
my family, I'm the black sheep of my family.
But for me, that's not. I'm probably black sheep too. Also, the black sheep and the golden child all mixed in one. But it's, for me, affection is very weird, and it's something that I have to work on again with my therapist, is learning how to unlearn some of those unhealthy things that I've learned in my childhood, like some of those like we grow up in Black households, like especially if you grow up in a single Black woman household, you're taught to be a certain, like you're taught to be strong, you're taught to get up, you got to do it on your own, you're taught to be very independent. So one of the things that I'm trying to unlearn is how to take away some of that control, because now I have control issues, and now I have issues with being too independent. So one of the things I'm trying to unlearn is how to maybe depend on another person for certain things, or be a little bit more affectionate, and let people in a little bit more, be more understanding. I can be empathetic. I think I just have a problem with being affectionate towards people.
Maybe that's my case too, because like I definitely feel where people are coming from, but I'm also a super logical thinker too. So I feel like if you're making the situation worse for yourself, it's hard to be empathetic from a logical standpoint. I feel like that's where I struggle.
It's hard to relate.
Yeah, it's hard to relate in that circumstance. It's like, do you not see that you're creating your own struggle? So like, I don't get it from that aspect. But
I in logic too. But again, it can be problematic because people sometimes just want empathy. Like they want to hear them. They want to hear you to hear that they're hurting. And they want to acknowledge the hurt that you may or may not have caused. Whether you believe it or not, whether it makes sense to you, that doesn't matter. It's how that person feels in that moment. And I think sometimes that's hard, especially for me, but it's something that you have to do if you want to improve some of the relationships that you have with significant others or your family, friends, whoever it is. You have to come from, again, back to what we were talking about earlier, empathy and understanding.
Well, clearly we can talk about this topic for a very long time. We've already been talking for almost an hour, and it like flew by like this.
I love mental health. I can talk about this all day.
I was about to say we'll probably have like mental health check-ins with Shaniqua here every once in a while. I'm definitely gonna have her on other episodes for all other sorts of topics, but this is her jush, so I figure I can't talk about mental health and not bring a mental health therapist. Like, she probably would have hit me up had I did this so long, been like, so you're a therapist now, that's crazy. Like, you're doing my job now, that's crazy. Okay.
It's my bread and butter. It's tattooed on my arm, guys. Like, I'm serious about my mental health.
As you should be, as everybody should be, really. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close things out. Again, I would like to thank my special guest, Shaniqua, here, mental health therapist Shaniqua.
Yes, and one last thing. If you're hesitant, if you don't know, you're not married to a therapist, guys, just go see one, check it out, get a feel for it, and see if it's your thing. See if it's something that can be helpful for you.
Oh, something else I want to touch on, like based off of what you just said, you should probably, just like with any other doctor or whatever, you can try out multiple people to see who best suits you. You know, just because you have one or two bad experiences doesn't mean, oh, therapy isn't for me. No, that's those individuals just didn't suit your needs. So,
absolutely. We tried one or two restaurants. That doesn't keep you from eating. So.
Listen, because I like to eat.
I like
that's not going to stop me.
So please, like, if you do some research too, like there's so many things on Google, like there's so many ways you can research people. People have like their whole profile background. They have websites up, like do research, figure out what's for you. Me personally, it's important for me to see someone that had my skin tone and someone that also was a female. I mean, granted, I'm not opposed to seeing a male therapist, but I'm going through women related issues. So I felt like talking to another female, they would understand a little bit more. I don't want to be biased because I don't want people to not come to me because I've only been in the mental health field since 2016. Like I don't have that much experience. That doesn't mean I can't help you. So I don't know what the word for it. Just be mindful. Like there's still people that can help you. Don't be completely closed-minded to it. Yeah,
I was just about to say, be open-minded.
Yeah.
But so that's our mental health discussion for today. Again, we're actually going to have more mental health checks, in the next coming episodes or whatever. Probably I'll try to do like a mental health episode maybe once a month or once every other month, something like that. Have little check-ins here and there.
And things every day.
And something else, again, like I said at the end of my last episode, do us a solid and drop comments on how you felt about tonight's episode. Also, for any future topics that you would like for us to discuss in future episodes. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and close out the night again. Thank you, sis. And until next time, we out.
Thank you for tuning in to Sip on This with A Paris. About to get lit with these topics. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for the love and good time. Forget to like, comment, subscribe. Without further ado, I bring to you this for you to sip on too.